Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and this video is going to be going over some new champions that are kind of being data mined, I think, in the Raid Shadow Legends game, and believed to be part of the next battle pass. So I want to get into that and kind of cover it as soon as it's kind of hitting the raid community and being shared. I believe the original source came from a video done by a YouTube channel, Panda Killer. I will definitely link to that channel down in the video description because I believe that was the original source of this information. Now it's being thrown around Discord and all different places, and people are asking me what I think. So I think that was the original source, and I want to give them credit. I will link to Panda Killer's channel down in the video description if you want to check out what I believe was the original kind of source of this info. But I want to take a look at these champions and kind of grade them and give you a live first reaction. I have purposely not looked at the skills. I've not read them in detail. I have just kind of compiled the images that are floating around, and I'm going to go over the abilities and kind of let you know what I think live here. So let's get into it. Okay, so diving in here, this is the first one. It's going to be a rare attack champion from the Barbarians called Exile Sorcerer. And taking a look at the base stats. Okay, looking kind of typical for a rare. The base stats aren't going to be super high. That's the aesthetic. And let's dive into the A1. Attack one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 30% chance of placing a decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Okay. And the A2, attack all enemies on a 3-turn cooldown, 50% chance of placing an AoE decreased speed and AoE weaken. Not bad. Okay. Not a bad ability. And then the A3, a 75% chance of placing a 15% decreased crit rate debuff and a 15% decreased crit damage debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. Again, on a 3-turn cooldown. Okay, so that's just an AoE debuff, but it doesn't actually attack. Alrighty. And then increase ally attack in faction crypts by 20%. Okay, this rare is decent. We've got AoE weakened, AoE debuffing on a 3-turn cooldown with an A1. That's a multi-hitter that places a debuff. Should be a slightly above average rare, and I could see having a little bit of utility in the game. Don't expect rares to be OP. So yeah, Exile Sorcerer looks okay. Okay, the next one is going to be Wandering Priest, another rare from the Barbarians, with a little bit better base speed this time of 102, and that's kind of the aesthetic. And then we've got the A1, attack one enemy 2 times, each hit a 30% chance of placing a 25% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. Okay, so a multi-hitter that places decreased attack. It is the small version, but being a rare character, that at least is an A1 with some utility. And then the A2 is remove all debuffs from a target ally, then heals them by 30% of their max HP and places a veil on them for 2 turns. We can get that to a 3-turn cooldown. That's not bad. The Barbarians do need a little bit better healing. So we've got a full cleanse and then a decent heal. Not a great one. I wish it was this champion's max HP. But also placing a veil with a pretty good base speed. Okay, it's alright. And then let's go into the A3 is going to be places a 15% strengthen and a 25% increased accuracy buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. That's not bad. That's a pretty good support skill. Again, we don't see a whole lot of increased accuracy buff in this game, so that's interesting. And the small version of Strengthen, which is also a new buff in Raid. So, yeah, I'll take it. That's a decent support ability for a rare champion to have. And then the Aura is increased ally defense and faction crypts by 20%. Okay, so this rare will be very good for the Barbarian faction crypts, especially for being a rare. The really good base speed, the good buffing, the cleansing, the healing, the defense aura, and faction crypts. And Wandering Priest should definitely be good for a little bit of dungeon progression and some of those faction crypts to help you kind of progress in a cheap way. And the next one here is Royal Arc Mage, an epic support from the Banner Lords. Looks very cool. Okay, I like the aesthetics here. Wow, base speed of 108 is very good, and some decent tankiness there on the stats. Alright, the A1 is going to be attack one enemy, fill this champion's turn meter by 10%, fills the turn meter by 20% if critical. Okay, so an A1, that's going to fill turn meter by 20% if you build him with crit. So usually supports that require crit can be pretty gear intensive, especially if they need accuracy and a bunch of speed or something. So then adding crit on top of that can make them a little bit tough to gear. But anyway, we got turn meter fill on A1. The A2 is attack one enemy. Also attack all other enemies if the first attack is critical. Okay, so obviously we're going to want crit. Each hit has a 50% chance to stun for 1 turn after attacking. Decreases the turn meter of each enemy without a stun by 20%. We can get this to a 3-turn cooldown with a bunch of books. 7 books required. Okay, so 3 turn, 1 enemy, and then attack all enemies if crit. Okay, so it is AoE if you build him with crit. And each hit has a chance to place a stun. That's really good. AoE stun on a 50%. That's very good. And then after attacking, decrease. Okay, so that's a pretty good support ability, especially for Faction Wars where stun is amazing. So this has potential to be very good for Faction Wars. Then the A3, place a 30% increased speed buff, 30% increased crit rate buff, and a 30% increase. Wow. Okay, so for 3 turns, that's really good. We get speed, crit rate, crit damage. Typically, your damage dealers are already going to have 100% crit, especially in the end game. Now, maybe in the early game and the mid game, you might have 50 to 70% crit or something when you don't have the 5 and 6-star gear yet and you haven't really min-maxed. So this will be another kind of progression support. That's the but even if you don't need the crit rate, on a 3-turn cooldown, 30% speed, 30% crit damage, on all allies for 3 turns on a 2-turn cooldown, that's pretty solid. I do like that. The passive here is immune to turn meter decreasing effects. Okay. It's a solid passive. Now, that's not something that happens super common. You're probably not going to get as much, consistent guaranteed value as like a defense buff or something, or an HP buff. But always nice to have when we can get a passive that's got some value. And the speed is the aura, is ally speed in the arena by 17%, which is a solid aura. It's not amazing, but it's solid. Okay, so, yeah, Royal Arc Mage should be a pretty good epic. I like some of the general utility here, and the AoE stun and the support for the allies in terms of speed and crit damage and a sturdy passive. Yeah, so the A1 buffing the turn meter of himself to help him kind of snowball some more turns and reset to get that cycle back to increasing the speed of the allies and doing more stuns and all that. So yeah, definitely an epic with some potential here in the Royal Arc Mage. Alrighty, the next one is going to be Inferno Golem, and wow, look at this guy, a defense epic from the Demon Spawn. I'm sure in motion this guy looks pretty cool. That's definitely interesting. So diving in here, we've got an A1 that attacks 1 enemy with a 50% chance of placing a decreased crit rate debuff for 2 turns based on defense. So we've got a champion based on defense here. A lot of potential. I like champions based on defense. Decreasing crit rate on an A1, that's not bad. The A2 is going to be attack all enemies on a 3-turn cooldown and a 20% chance of placing an HP burn debuff for 2 turns. It's a pretty low chance. The chance of placing the debuff, increases by 20% for each enemy alive. Okay, so for like a clan boss scenario, it's only going to be a 20% chance, but for like a spider scenario, we're going to be placing a lot of AoE HP burn based on defense with the AoE. Yeah, okay, so some spider potential, some dungeon potential, and I do like kind of the design there of that ability. The A3 is another AoE we can book to a 4-turn cooldown. 50% chance of increasing the cooldown of all skills by 2 turns on enemies under HP burn debuffs. Wow. Also places a shield buff equal to 20% of this champion's max HP. Okay, so this champion's going to be a little bit tough to gear. We're going to want really good defense because that's what his damage is based on, and then we're going to be placing shield based on HP. So going to need a lot of tankiness on this champion to pull out a bunch of that value. Instantly activates the skill when this champion is revived by Elemental Conqueror. Okay, that must be the passive coming up here. Remember, I said I'm going over this for the first time. Wanted to get kind of a live reaction. I like that. That's going to synergize well. You do the AoE HP burn first, then you come from behind and do this, and you're going to increase cooldowns and play shield. Very good sustain champion for kind of longer scenarios. And then, no, this is the Fiery Wrath. 10% chance of placing a fear debuff on an enemy for 1 turn whenever they receive damage from an H. Wow. That's good. That's really good for faction wars and dungeon waves and maybe even the arena. Yeah, that's a good passive on an enemy whenever they receive damage from any HP burn. Wow, that's really good. So you pair this guy with another HP burn, like an Ignatius or something. Yeah, because I think that's gonna proc off of your ally HP burns that they place too. So yeah, that has a lot of potential to do some cool things, even though it is only a 10% chance. But if you're placing a bunch of HP burns, that could really add up. Then we've got the passive, increase ally HP in all battles by 20%. So weird that he's a defense champion, but then he also has an ability to scale shield with HP and also the aura that's HP. So wow, you know, a pretty solid champion. This is one that I would really be you know, excited to dive in and kind of test more. I really see a lot of potential here with this one. And then going back to this skill, where it says instantly activates the skill when the champion is revived by Elemental Conjurer, I believe is another champion coming up here a little bit later that I'm going to discuss when I'm kind of going through all of these screenshots and kind of trying to piece everything together. But okay, so this is going to be a tandem effect with another champion that's going to be coming out, and so he's going to pair with the Elemental Conjurer. And you know, I haven't seen the abilities yet, but I'm assuming Elemental Conjurer is going to have some sort of revive ability. So slight correction there, and that's what that's going to mean. Now we have a legendary Urast the Soul Cage, a legendary HP demon spawn. Wow, they are going all out with the aesthetics here. So this is going to be a void legendary. I wonder if this is going to be the end of the Battle Pass reward, kind of similar to what Whirlwind Frost King was on the last one. Okay, so let's dive into the kit here. We've got an A1 that attacks one enemy, place a shield buff on this champion equal to 10% of this champion's max HP. Wow. The shield value increases by 1% for each poison debuff on the target. Okay, so this would be really good in like a clan boss scenario or a boss scenario where we're stacking poisons. But even if you get this guy up to, you know, in the end game, you can get champions up to 100,000 HP. So every A1 is going to be a 10,000 shield. There's some really tanky potential here with that A1. And then the A2 here, this is going to get wordy. Alright, so we can get this to a 3-turn cooldown with 6 books. Attack all enemies, 75% chance we can book to 100 of decreasing the turn meters by 15% of enemies under 1 or more poison debuff. Also, 75% chance we can get them to 100 of placing decreased speed debuff for 2 turns under 2 or more poisons. 75% chance of placing a stun debuff if under 3 or more poisons. Instantly activates the skill when this champion is revived by Elemental Conjurer. Wow, so that's the first time I think we've seen a triple tandem or a triple, you know, coupling effect. Wow, okay, so we've already got the other one that has a skill that instantly activates when revived, and now we've got this one by Urast, gonna be instantly activating this AoE when revived by Elemental Conjurer. So okay, wow, gonna have some potential there for a lot of synergies within a team. And if you've got a poison team placing heavy poisons, maybe trying to bring some value out of the toxic set, because that set isn't used a whole lot in raid. But this doesn't matter if it's a 5% or a 2.5% poison. If you get all these champions together, get some toxic sets on people, hitting with these AoE abilities, now all of a sudden you're proccing all these extra effects. You can really do some crazy things if you made a specific team to kind of extract value out of these abilities. So at least interesting, if not really good. We'd have to test in and kind of see. Then we've got the A3, place a 25% strengthen buff on all allies for 2 turns and a 50% ally protection buff. Wow, okay, so that's on a 3-turn cooldown. That's extremely tanky. Okay, that's really good. I like that. The passive, holy moly here. When attacked, a 50% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. When an ally is attacked while under a strengthen buff, has a 50% chance of placing a provoke on the attacker for 1 turn. Increases the champion's max HP by 5%. Max HP by 5% whenever an enemy receives damage from a poison debuff placed by this champion. Whenever an enemy receives damage from a poison debuff placed by this champion also decreases. Wow. Cannot decrease a single champion's max HP by more than 25% in one battle. Will not decrease a boss's max HP. Okay, so a lot to unpack here. Gonna be really good for like dungeon progression and like a faction wars type scenario. A lot to unpack there, but really synergizing with poisons. And if you build the right team around this, you could really do a ton of fun stuff with that. Then we've got the passive is ally resist in all battles by 80. So wow, Uras the Soul Cage looks fun to play around with and looks like some insane capabilities in terms of tankiness. So excited to kind of see him go live and what exactly that entails. Okay, and now we get to Elemental Conjurer. It looks like it's going to be an epic support from the Dark Elves. So the other ones were not Dark Elves, so looks like not something you're going to be able to do to like slam through faction wars. It's going to be more of a dungeon progression or arena clan boss type scenario, and you're not going to be able to use all of this in conjunction in faction wars, or at least these kind of tandem effects. But okay, let's see what we got here. The A1, attack one enemy, 50% chance of placing a block buffs debuff for 2 turns. Wow, that's a really, really good A1. Block buffs for 2 turns? That's insanely strong on an A1. And we can book that up to a 70% chance. Jeez. That's really good. I like that on an A1. Anytime it's turn meter or buff manipulation, buff stealing, anything like that, block debuffs or block buffs, anything like that, very strong on an A1. The A2 is 75% chance of removing all buffs from all enemies. We can book that up to 85, 90, 100, okay? We can book that to 100. Also, 100% chance of placing a 25% weaken on all enemies for 2 turns. And that's on a 3-turn cooldown. So we've got AoE buff strip and AoE big version of weaken on all enemies every 3 turns. There is so much utility there for dungeons and faction wars and even arena, especially in a more defensive arena team. You let them kind of go for it first, you absorb, and then you strip them of all their buffs. A lot of potential here with Elemental Conjurer. Then we've got the A3, a lot to unpack here. Revives a dead ally with 50% HP and 50% turn meter. That's pretty good. Then a block debuffs for 2 turns. Whew! And this is the champions that are going to activate abilities when they're revived from this champion. So wow. Also revive Infernal Golem or Uras the Soul Cage. Yeah, that's what we're talking about, with 30% HP, 30% turn meter if they're on the same team and not the target of the skill. Okay. If either Infernal Golem or Uras the Soul Cage are the target of the skill, that champion will be revived for 50% turn meter and a block debuff for 2 turns. Okay, so yeah, you're basically just guaranteeing the a little bit of value there for them no matter what. We can get that to a 4-turn cooldown. Okay. Wow. Then we've got an aura, increased ally accuracy in all battles by 40. Okay, so very cool. And lots of potential here in terms of getting champions to work together in dungeon teams and doing cool things. So Elemental Conjurer looks like a lot of potential in terms of being a reviver with AoE buff strip, AoE debuffing, and a pretty solid A1 that's blocking buffs. I do like this champion a lot. I like the design of this. Alrighty, and then lastly, we have Fae the Tomb Angel. Very cool aesthetics, pretty low base speed, so there might be some turn meter boosting or some sort of effect to make up for that. Pretty uncommon to have a legendary with speed that low, so I expect something pretty insane, and that's a pretty big base attack. But let's dive in here. On this champion, all we have so far is the A1, and it's gonna be attack 2 enemies at random. It has a 75% chance of placing a hex debuff for 5 turns. Wow, so we're getting the ability to, Hex does not exist in the game outside of the Minotaur. The Minotaur is the only spot that I know of. Maybe it comes up in some Faction Wars boss or something now that I think about it, but it was typically none of your champions could ever place a Hex. It was just something from the Minotaur and maybe in a Faction Wars boss now that I think about it. But this is coming to the ability for the player to place Hex. So 2 times at random with a booked up 100% chance of Hex for 5 turns that can't be resisted. Yeah, and then see each critical hit decreases the cooldown of Not of This World. So kind of an ancillary way to cycle through our turns because of the low base speed. I was expecting something like that. Wow. That's got some potential. Hex is a pretty cool debuff. It makes the target take a lot more damage. So it's going to be similar to like a decreased defense or a weaken, but it's a little bit more consistent and a little bit more flat in terms of how it performs, if I remember right. So, wow, interesting. A lot to unpack there, and again, I was told that this information was first leaked by Panda Killer. I will link to that channel down in the video description, which I believe is where these screenshots were extracted from. You know, kind of first take of all this kind of hitting the community, and wanted to get this out to show as many of you as soon as possible. You know, once it was leaked, kind of let everybody get the information at the same time. So yeah, that's gonna kind of do it for this video, kind of looking at some of these champions where we're kind of expecting to come in the next battle pass. And remember, this is not guaranteed to be in the game. There may be some tweaks or some changes. Some of these may be better or worse, but definitely looks like some interesting things, and I would expect to see the battle pass coming out within the next 2 to 4 weeks, somewhere in there. I don't know that in terms of any concrete knowledge, but if I had to guess, I would say sometime in the next 2 to 4 weeks, if I just had to kind of use an educated estimate. So wow, you know, huge shout out to Panda Killer for spreading this information, and thank you. I will link to your channel down in the video description, and you know, as always, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.